Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And after meeting with President Trump yesterday regarding the ongoing crisis in Venezuela, I rise to praise the Trump administration for its mindful and strategic response to conditions in that country. All options must be on the table, including military force. My constituents would likely be among the first in that fight. I'm incredibly proud of them, and if asked, they will successfully execute any mission that they are called to do. But policymakers have an obligation not to send any of America's sons and daughters into any ill-advised conflict. The Trump administration clearly understands the risks associated with military intervention in Venezuela at this time. They include a few things. First, if the United States military were to have troops on the ground in Venezuela today, it is very likely that the Maduro regime would scapegoat their own failures. The people of Venezuela voted their way into socialism, and now it appears they have to fight their way out of it. While this should be a lesson to us all, military intervention should not be presented as an opportunity for the Maduro regime to explain away why people in Venezuela have no medicine, have no food, are starving, at times see their own countrymen turning tanks and weapons against them. Those failures belong to the Maduro regime. Those failures belong to this socialist dictatorship. And were we to intervene in an unwise way, potentially that would create confusion about the conditions that led to these terrible circumstances. Second, if the United States military were to intervene at this time, it is my concern that it would allow the Maduro regime to externalize their conflict. It is no surprise to any in this chamber or many in the Trump administration that there remains some latent resentment within pockets of Latin America regarding U.S. intervention and regime change and nation building. And at a time when we are seeing democratic successes and governments stood up that are beginning to provide for their citizens, it would be deeply unwise to stoke any anti-American resentment with ill-advised conflict. Right now, Maduro functionally lacks material support from the forward-thinking countries in the Western Hemisphere. And we would not want to create any opportunity for there to be a call to the new Bolivarian alliance. That ultimately is what a lot of these transnational criminal organizations want in Venezuela. They want to erode nation states and borders. They want to end nationalism in our hemisphere so that they have a more permissive environment for their illicit activities. Third, the Trump administration clearly understands that if the United States were deemed to be too involved in the popular uprising in Venezuela, that Maduro would potentially have the opportunity to deny the organic desires of Venezuelans to fight for their own freedom. The reason people are rising up in Venezuela right now is not a consequence of the United States government, it's a consequence of the failures of their own government and their passionate desire for freedom, and one that we should stand with the people of Venezuela to execute. Despite these conditions and despite the challenges, I remain hopeful that there is a brighter future for Venezuela. As we meet and gather now, Juan Guaido is able to go about the country freely, despite not having a military, despite not having staff. He's able to rally thousands of his fellow countrymen in public squares and make the argument for freedom. Meanwhile, the coward Maduro remains huddled up in a military base, unable to move around and unsure who will turn on him next. But if the last quarter century has taught our country anything about the nature of freedom, it is that freedom has to be fought for hardest by those who yearn to live it. Freedom cannot be the gift that America gives other countries, purchased solely with the currency of the blood of U.S. service members. People have to fight for freedom and earn it. They have to die for it. They have to bury their relatives over it. And then they have to love it and care for it so much that they will never let another strong man take it away from them, and that they will never fall victim to the passions that led Venezuela down this dark path to socialism and dictatorship and starvation and desperation. We stand with the people of Venezuela, and they must stand now and fight for a better future for their country.